Hey everyone, I just wanted to start off by asking you guys to let me know how you feel about this new green screen video format. Do you like this format, or would you prefer that I just do disembodied voice over the static webcomic pages? Personally, I like doing the green screen stuff because I can add more visual variety, but what do you guys think? Anyway, on with the review. So, Second String has wrapped up a solid 20-page chapter, and honestly, more than anything, this chapter was interesting. We saw some things we hadn't seen before, and of course, we're still dealing with the track team, which is nice because I fully expected Teshi to just drop that whole thing for the most part after James got rejected by Mike. So it's good to see that that's still continuing to go on, even if it is still being used as a vehicle for relationship drama. At least some of the characters on the track team want to keep things to, track practice. In any case, it starts off with a really nice opening page of Mike running around on the gymnasium floor. And I will say this about this chapter. I think that the arts and the paneling in this chapter is actually really strong. I was going back through it before the video so I could just refresh myself on everything and kind of get my thoughts together. And I was like, damn, a lot of this art here is actually pretty good. The pacing of it, I think the pacing in this chapter is actually really, really good. It doesn't feel like things are dragging out too slow and things are constantly happening. But it is interesting for many different reasons. Well, first off, outside of the art being really nice, it also features, I think, my least favorite panel in the entire webcomic, which is the panel where James is on his knees begging Felix for forgiveness or something. It was just like really bizarre. And James is talking about wanting to be like a toddler, and look, I know that this is a magical world full of talking cats and dogs, and two of those cats should have died by now, but there is no way that even a high schooler that was comfortable around their friends would act in the manner that James is acting here. James is totally unhinged. This is like, I can't even like put my finger on what kind of behavior this is. This is like the most fruitiest Fruit Loop behavior that could ever be imagined. And it's insane that Teshi would have a character like Matt who has to desperately hide his feelings for guys when James can run around screaming and crying and crawling on the floor about how much he wants to be with another guy or him liking other guys. Oh, they're in a gymnasium. Sound echoes around in there. Everyone's gonna hear it. You could make the argument, oh, no one else is in there. There's no way a high schooler, even today, would act like that. That's crazy. And I get what Teshi is trying to do. She is trying to set up David and James kind of having similar energy, but do you have to like emasculate James this hard to do that? You can have James be goofy without him like just being annoying. Like, I already find David pretty annoying, even if he does have a pretty funny line about close but no cigar, which is fine because we shouldn't be smoking anyway. Like, that got a little bit of a nose exhale from me when I read it, including the page where Finn is trying to cheer up Mike, but Mike's just kind of like, whatever, dude, stop kissing my ass. This chapter is primarily about Mike, despite me spending so much time talking about James, but Mike is also, his feelings are interesting, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what Teshi meant by it. Like, when you step back and look at this chapter as a whole, it really is about how Mike is just kind of feeling alienated and depressed. But the way this chapter presents it, I get it, but I don't get it. And going through the comments on the page specifically that I'm thinking about, which is he's thinking about Daisy, specifically the Daisy from Love My Way, and then Lucy, and then Paulo from New Year's Resolution, and then of course looking at James hanging out with David doing the same stretching exercises they were doing a few chapters earlier, which is a nice parallel. I think that was specifically done because before it was James that was happily stretching with Mike. Something that I forgot to mention is that early on in this chapter, James makes a pretty mean joke at Mike's expense, and even though he didn't mean to like really hurt Mike's feelings, it's very clear that he wasn't thinking, and of course it hurt Mike. Like, Mike's like, you know, this guy was like ready to, you know, do things to me that I won't talk about in this video, but he was ready to do them right there in the park, and now he's fawning over this other guy like Mike didn't even exist. But that's the thing. Mike is thinking about all these people that had feelings for him, and I guess he just assumed or guessed correctly that Paulo had feelings for him. If not, it doesn't make any sense. Or maybe they're characters that Mike had feelings for. Whichever the case is, these are all people that Mike or they had their chance and they lost it. And I think specifically Mike had his chance with these people and he lost it because Sandy. But he's like upset, which, okay, understandable. Be upset, that's fine. But he says, I should be used to it by now. It's like, bro, you did it to yourself. You pushed all these people away. What do you mean you should be used to it by now? Like, is he like, I have to push these people away? Why am I upset that I do this? Like, he does mention in New Year's Resolution that he hates having to choose, but he's still having to do that. And I'm having an epiphany as I'm recording this video, so bear with me, guys. We're having a Rob epiphany, a Phantom Man epiphany. I think that this is a direct tie into what he was talking about in New Year's Resolution, where he loves his friends just as strongly as if they were a romantic partner, but it isn't like, you know, romantic, because maybe Sandy's just getting in the way. And he's thinking back to everyone he could have had. He could have been with Daisy. He talked about that. He could have been with Lucy at any point along the way, and he didn't take that chance, even though he was like kind of trying to, but Lucy was still too scared. Maybe this is specifically more about Eternal Flame, where he went back to Sandy when he could have just as easily been with Lucy. And then of course, Paulo. I really don't know if Mike like specifically knows that Paulo has a crush on him, or if he's just lucky guessing, or who the fuck knows. It doesn't matter.
Hey everyone, so I was like mid editing the video and I realized at this section I completely neglected to talk about James, but obviously Mike pushed James away because of Sandy. Mike could have been with James easily. James would have been happy for it, but unfortunately Sandy is getting in the way again. Yeah.
But the point is that he has chosen this life, and sure, he can be upset about it, but he has all the power in the world to change it. And I think that's the most frustrating part, is that he has isolated himself, yes, because of his own actions, but that could also possibly lead him to trying to keep things working with Sandy, because he feels like if he lets her go, he's not going to have anyone else.
Let her go.
But if I let her go, I'll have no one.
That's not true.
And something that doesn't really get talked a lot about Mike is he might also kind of be a little dependent on being in a relationship. Like, sure, he was like fine kind of pining for Lucy while they weren't together, but why can't he just be like, okay, no relationship for me right now? Why is he so worried about these other people that he could have had a relationship with but didn't? They're clearly still his friends, except for Lucy, but like Paulo, right? And Daisy, and maybe James, or even though James is kind of being a dickhead, even though I don't think he means to be. So what's the deal with that? I'm spending a lot of time in this because I'm trying to figure out what it means. What do you guys think it means? Do you think that this is him wanting to break that cycle of having to push people away because of Sandy, and he's still upset that he has to do it? Or is it something else entirely? Moving on, because you might think that's like the climax of this whole chapter. We still have several more pages to go. Mike goes home and we see something that we haven't actually seen in BCB before, which is domestic dispute. Like, it's a little bit too harsh of a term. I think marital problem might also be a little bit too harsh, but it also feels a little bit more like what is going on. Mike comes home to his mom having an argument with his dad over the phone because Mike's mom has to go do something that night at work, and Mike's dad obviously isn't there, and Haley isn't like answering her phone, and Mike's mom doesn't want to keep having Haley watch Chris because they're supposed to be the parents. Haley is not Chris's mom, right? And that's her perspective. And I think it's a really interesting page. Like, when it came out, I was like, damn, this is kind of cool. We're seeing a whole new type of thing. So there's very clearly harsh feelings between Mike's mom and Mike's dad because she, shaking her fist and she's like, I'll figure it out. No thanks to you. And she hangs up. And she's a little bit embarrassed that Mike overheard the entire thing. Mike offers to watch. And then there's a very interesting interaction between Mike and his mom where they both seem to understand their problems with his dad. I know that the point of all of this, specifically for this chapter, is to get Mike in a position where he watches Chris. But I think that could have been done in a way where it was way less high stakes than what we're seeing here. Is this sort of parental marital issue thing something that Teshi wants to explore further, or is it just a means to an end? And I feel like because it is as high stakes as it is, or as, deeper or serious as it is, then I think it might lead to something. It would be weird for Teshi to pull this out of her hat in what is essentially the final act of this webcomic, at least this major arc of Mike and Lucy or whatever the hell we're going through, because you had all those years to kind of bring up these issues and we've never really heard them before. I understand that Haley has been asked to watch Chris before. So Mike steps up to the plate and offers to watch Chris. And Mike's mom isn't super keen on that idea either. She is showering Mike with praise, saying that she's her golden boy and her diamond, and that he never asks for anything, and that he's always acing his exams. And it's also a little sobering because it almost feels like Mike's mom has just given up on Haley. Like, Haley's not going to be the child that makes it, right? Mike is going to be the one that's successful, and Haley's going to be the one that just does okay. It's a very real thing. It's also very sad. That's why this chapter is so interesting, because of these different windows into things that are happening in the wider world, as well as like, what does Teshi mean by Mike thinking about all these characters, specifically his friends that have kind of moved on from him. That's why, even though this chapter has like the worst panel, I think, in all of BCB, it is also still very interesting. And I would say overall, this is a good chapter. Like, it's giving me something to think about further than other chapters in the past have done. Like, sure, you have things like Seeing Stars where it's like, ooh, who's chasing Lucy? And I guess we might find out about that in this current chapter, First Degree Burn. But this feels a little bit deeper. It's fun to speculate and it feels natural. It doesn't feel like it's in a way where things are inconsistent, so you're trying to figure out what characters actually feel because Teshi writes them however she feels like in the moment. This feels like genuinely interesting world building things to theorize about. That's why I like it so much. That's why this chapter is so good, despite, the thing. I guess on one final minor note before I wrap things up, I thought that the funny Kung Fu Panda parody thing is hilarious. I mean, I already called it funny, but still, I like the faces. It's so stupid. The shit-eating, the smug face, the DreamWorks face she gives to the panda. It's like, Wow. It's also funny because this panel actually like spawned an entire argument in the Fanel Discord, which you can totally check out in the link in the description below, by the way. And it's probably the stupidest thing we've ever argued about. What is this actually a parody of? It's clearly a parody of Kung Fu Panda. Second String, this is a good, interesting chapter. Good job, Tatashi, for putting out another banger. Things are getting better. They're getting better, or maybe I'm just less jaded and cynical than I was. Whatever the case is, what did you guys think about Second String? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know how you feel about these green screen format videos. Do you like these, or would you rather me go back to the static comic pages with the voiceover? Honestly, I like doing these more. It feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more like we're having a conversation instead of me rigidly talking like a robot and saying, oh my god, this comic sucks. Here's like 8,000 reasons why it sucks. I feel like I can be a little bit nicer if I don't have time to sit down and be angry about things. Okay, that's the end of the video for real now. I will see you guys next time when next video will probably just be more fan fiction reading. There are other videos that I've made that aren't fan fiction readings. I have a video about Augustus, but god damn it, if Augustus shows up in First Degree Burn, I'm gonna have to write him into that video. Anyway, I'm done rambling. Thank you guys for watching this video. I will see you all next time.